What is happening, NBA fans? Welcome into another week of Dropping Dimes. Please let me know, for those watching along in the chat, how the audio sounds. I had to futz with some settings, and I'm not entirely sure how it sounds. So let me know if it's terrible, if it sounds fine, whatever the case is. So, the party's over. Let me know how the sound is. You're the first in the chat. If it sounds all right, sounds terrible, let me know. I'll have to make adjustments as we go. So here we go. There it is, guys. We got a champion. We have a champion. It is official. The Milwaukee Bucks are the NBA champions of 2020-2021. It's incredible to have watched. It ended up being a great game last night. It started off sloppy as all hell from both sides. I mean, the Bucks could not turn the ball over. I think it was like 8 turnovers in the first half. They ended up with something like 18 turnovers. I mean, just one after the other. It felt as though they were trying to give the game away to go to a game 7. And the Suns were doing everything in their power to make that a reality early on. And Giannis just wasn't having it. Flat out. Now we finally had Chris Paul show up again. Shot 11 of 19 from the floor. Booker had a bad game, 8 of 22, and 0 for 7 from three-point land. But on the flip side, for the Bucks, I mean, for the longest time, the only other person in double digits with Giannis was Bobby Portis. I mean, Chris Middleton was having a mediocre game. Drew Holiday, and we're talking about just offensive point, production. Drew Holiday was having a bad game, just flat out a bad game. But he was doing everything else Holiday was on the other side of the ball. He got another nice steal, that little strip steal at the top of the key on Devin Booker. But it's crazy. I mean, as someone posted last night on Twitter, Giannis is the first ever player to win Most Improved, Defensive Player of the Year, Finals MVP, and NBA MVP. He's the only player to have ever done it. And he's only one of 3 players to have won Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and MVP, along with Jordan and Hakeem. He joins a list of, Jordan, LeBron, Jerry West, I think it was. It was, 6-7 guys that have scored 50 points in a finals game. It's in a closeout game. He also gets double-digit boards. He's got 5 blocks. One got called for a goaltend that was a goaltend. But he was a menace all over the floor. I think he got called for a foul on one as well. That would have been another block. I know Portis did that block on Booker, where Booker got the foul call, and I think in the flow of the game, that's not necessarily a foul, but at the same time, it's like the amount of pushing and pulling and everything that guys are doing back and forth. I think that's a legitimate. At some point, you do have to call a foul. It's just, you have to. I was kind of surprised on that baseline call for Booker later in the game where he chicken winged and got called on the offensive foul on that one. And at that point, they had just let them run so rough into each other that I was surprised that they made that call on Booker on the offense, because he was getting officiated like he's a superstar. There's, nothing inherently wrong in that. the NBA does need to promote its next generation. But it's kind of one of those of like, it reminded me of Wade in 2006. Like, yes, you bore it out to be a superstar worthy of getting those calls, but it just seems early on in your career to be getting them, especially in Wade's case. Booker's been in the league a couple years longer than Wade was at that point. But I mean, it was crazy to watch, especially we go into the half and it is a complete opposite of the previous game where the Suns had gone up huge and then Bucks have an incredible second quarter and take the lead going into the half. And you have the inverse of that in this one where Bucks have a 13-point lead at the end of the first quarter. And then going into the half, the Suns take a 5-point lead. And then it's knotted up after 3. And you're like, this is going to be a hell of a finish. A hell of a finish. And hats off to Giannis, because if there was ever a time to fix your free throw ills, it was in this game. His shot looked good every time. Like I mentioned in the past, for every single shot that a guy goes up and takes, I make an instant decision as to whether or not I think that's good or not. Who knows what my percentage of getting it right is. Because like that Middleton late game floater, I was like, oh, that's a bad shot. And then it goes in and be like, well, it's a good shot now that it went in. But the Giannis free throw shooting was just a thing of beauty every time. He was even getting the soft shooter's bounce. I think there was one free throw trip where he hit front of the rim on both free throws, and both had a nice soft little bounce and went in. And you're like, yeah, they've just got good arc on this. The release looks good. It looks fluid. What if, so from this moment forward, he's just flipped the script on his free throw shooting and he becomes a good free throw shooter, in the mid 70s for the rest of his career. And it was just a matter of a psychological block. And he got through that and close out game 6 of the NBA Finals. Now, I know I saw on Twitter people are up in arms about Steven Jackson saying that Giannis was on a super team. And, people saying, why is he trying to discredit Giannis? And, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as someone rightly pointed out, it's just to get his name out there. There is no other reason. Because if you believe this was a super team, then I think we need to figure out what the definition of a super team is. Because running alongside of Giannis, you got Middleton, a 2-time All-Star, and Drew Holiday, a 1-time All-Star, and Brook Lopez, I believe, a 1 to maybe 2-time All-Star. And that's it. Drew's made 2 all-defensive teams. There's some other guys that made the all-rookie team, but that's it's utterly meaningless. Just like by and large, winning rookie of the year to me is meaningless. Unless you can see from day one that individual is going to eventually win an MVP and push his team to championship kind of level. Rookie awards are nothing. They mean nothing because a lot of those guys on those teams are on terrible teams and they're getting, the opportunity to get more playing time and shoot the ball more than rookies on other teams. So I don't know. It doesn't always translate to being anything worthwhile down the line. But to call that a super team is like I don't. Then what does that make the Nets? Super duper team? I mean, you have 2 former MVPs and another guy that's a perennial all-star, even if he doesn't play 50% of the games before the All-Star break in Kyrie. He's going to make the All-Star team. And you got 3 of those guys. All three are more than likely Hall of Famers. I can't envision a world where Kyrie is the only potential question mark, and I don't see a way in which he more than likely doesn't make the Hall of Fame. Especially if the Nets manage to win. If they win a championship as it's currently constructed next year, then he's a surefire, more than likely a Hall of Famer. Now, Harden and Durant are first ballot. So there's 2 on one team. So I think it's just clearly clickbaity type of, I want to get my name out there. I want to be the topic of conversation today. And people dragging me. I have zero problem with that because it only increases my exposure and, the Ball family strategy of, so long as people are talking about you, then other people will have you on to talk about you. Creating controversy just makes you all the more appealing because perhaps you can come and create controversy on their show, and then more people will be talking about what happened on, whatever the show is. So it's just a marketing ploy in my book. Anyway, good for you, Steven Jackson. But, if you've been paying attention to this show, I've been pulling for the Bucks. Unofficially. Sorry, allergies are killing me today. Unofficially, in my head, I never stated it on the show emphatically. I have brought up the fact that I felt that whoever won the Bucks Nets series was going to win the championship. But then when the way in which they beat the Nets, where Durant is an inch and a half from hitting a 3 instead of a 2, if he didn't have those boat for feet, which if you ever seen, there's a picture of him from Team USA and he's sitting in folding chairs that are lined up against a wall or something like that. And he's got his legs fully extended and they're fully extended and they're crossed, I believe, if memory serves. And you can see the length of his feet, and his legs into his feet look like hockey sticks. Just these massive, long, huge feet. And if you ever tried on the KD, they take his foot and use that as a general mold. They obviously make tweaks for the populace as a whole, but that is a narrow fucking shoe. And as much as people rave about it, I can't wear it. I don't have a wide foot, but my foot isn't that narrow. And these big boat feet, and if those big boat feet were an inch and a half shorter, perhaps, the Nets are in this position and they get full health. But I felt, whoever wins that series is going to win the championship as a whole. I like the East this year, just given all the turmoil and injuries within the West. But then when Giannis almost destroys his knee, I mean, think about this. 2 weeks ago, he had an injury that was so bad. When I'm watching it in real time, you get that Pavlovian response of, oh my God. And I had to walk out of the room and I'm like flexing my hands like, feeling that I don't give a shit who it is. Any player that goes down when they have an injury that bad, it's like, oh my God. But for the Bucks, it's like you take Giannis off this team. Think about it. Last night, they would have been beaten by 50. He scored 50 of the 105 points, and they needed him every time. And the most impressive thing I think about it was the fact that he was getting it done from damn near everywhere on the court. He had a little turnaround, somewhat hezzy, but not quite, fadeaway from the left elbow where he did a shimmy, shake, turnaround, and began to fade away. And as he was releasing it, doing my good or not good, guessing the shot, I was like, that's good. Just the fluidity of it. Even if he missed, that's a good shot. It didn't look disjointed. It just the rhythm of it looked completely normal, and it went in. But he was making shots like that from all kinds of different points on the floor. Now he's doing this normal Giannis thing of I am going to dominate you inside. It's what Giannis does. He's modern day Shaq. Whoever came with that comparison first, congratulations. That is apropos. But he was getting it done from everywhere on the court. And just watching it, you're like, this dude is completely dialed in. The rest of the team, not so much. But he is ready to play today. Undoubtedly. Yeah, I'm trying to look up because memory serves, he did hit 1-3. Yes, he did. He went 1 for 3. And that 3 came first half, I want to say in the second quarter. Maybe it was the end of the first. But yeah, I mean, knotted up after 3 quarters. And you're like, this is all we wanted. This is all we wanted. And Milwaukee has been 50 years. They showed up last night, according to, reports there was 65,000 people in the Deer District, which is terrible. Can we all agree that is a terrible name, the Deer District? I realize you want to create your own Jurassic Park, but Jurassic Park is the perfect name. Just don't come up with your own alliterative name. The Deer District, just terrible. But they had, said before the game that they expanded the area. They had, beefed up the stage, and they were anticipating something like 50,000 people. And according to reports last night, it was 65,000. But when they did those overhead drone shots, seemed like that 65,000 could be accurate. It's like, you might have something to this. And then the other 17,000 in there. So you're talking about almost, 82, somewhere around 82,000 people were in downtown Milwaukee last night within the arena and outside of it to celebrate. And hopefully they had a very fun night. I mean, Giannis's, I don't know if it was IG Live or wherever he was, he said he had not slept. He'd been up all night. He's driving around with his finals MVP. Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. This is a boon for sorry, I was just reading something in the chat. Check out wear testers. I have. Before I go out and look for new shoes, I look online for reviews of ones that I think potentially could work for me. So I've seen wear testers and Nightwing and a couple others. Anyway, so for small market teams, this is huge. Now, it was a weird year given the sheer number of injuries. And once again, people are going to point to condensed schedule and all that. But if you look at the rash of injuries, most of them were just either that individual normally has some sort of injury during the season, or it was a fluke occurrence. And I don't think that you can blame this season on that injury. There were some that are just like, yeah, that's a fatigue. That's more than likely a fatigue type of thing. But I think the preponderance of them were just a random. It all managed to catch up this year, and this is going to be a high watermark type of year. But the small market victory where you were able to build a team, I mean, look at Chris Middleton. He was in the G League and then got graduated to the Bucks team, and him and Giannis have been struggling from the depths of the Eastern Conference to slowly becoming the perennial best team in the East and best team in the league during the regular season, and then flaming out and having to overcome that. I mean, when they went down, they've been down 0-2 more than once in this playoff, run. They've lost, nail biter games. They've been crushed, and they continued to fight back. It's really a testament to their resiliency. But the small market aspect of it, coupled with now you have the second, international outside of this side of the world, because Tim Duncan is an international player from the Bahamas. But for when you think international, most people don't think that Tim Duncan is, whereas Giannis and Dirk are Dirk, Akeem. Like, it's a short list of international players that have come in and become the best player in the league and led their team to a championship. So it's also part of a trend of the league growing outside of just the States, and it's been on this trajectory now for the past few years, where they're bringing in more and more talent, and then a lot of that talent ends up being top tier. I mean, the next one you would assume would be Luka would be sniffing, making these championship runs. And then there's another anointing of an international player being able to lead a team in the world's toughest league. But for these small market teams, I don't know that they can now truly point to, oh, we're getting beat. You're going to continue to be beat out by the quote unquote premier destinations within the league. LA, New York, Miami, Texas, because of their income tax laws, no state income tax. And those cities, some of those cities, the players really seem to love. So the smaller market teams, you're going to run into that. You're going to lose, but you don't have to be a feeder system for all those others. Look at the Bucks. This is primarily a team that they built, or they made acquisitions. They had to make tough choices along the way about who to keep and who to let go. Look at Malcolm Brogdon, and they kept Brooke Lopez, and that was their Sophie's choice. Turns out they won a championship, so they made the right decision. Brogdon can't stay healthy, but I thought when he left, it's like they're going to miss that offensive punch just to have another guy out there that can play make and get you a bucket. Little did we know at the time that they were going to get Drew Holiday, who, when he's on, that team is a juggernaut. And when he's off, it can be, especially him. And then Middleton is not hitting early. Although that's kind of Middleton's bag at this point. You don't know what you're going to get in the first half, but pretty much in these playoffs, in the second half, he will heat up. Which, given the two halves to do it in, I think we'd all take someone heating up in the second half when you need those buckets and guys are tired and all that jazz. But it'd be, although I read today that, so Drew Holiday, because they won a championship, it triggered a clause in his contract to pay him $1 million, which now pushes the Milwaukee Bucks over the tax threshold. So now they are a luxury tax team. I think the ownership would take that. And by the way, is there anything worse than the owner's speech when they're handing out the trophy for any championship? It's just the worst. The crowd doesn't care. The players and coaching staff are respectful because these guys cut their checks, but they don't care. It's just that the owners, the three guys that held it up, and the crowd is like, yeah, whatever. We don't care. You're not the ones who actually won this championship. And then he gives his speech, and he ends it expecting some triumphal noise from the crowd, and they were kind of relatively indifferent. And then, they announced coming up next is Coach Bud, and the crowd just goes ape shit, just completely ape shit. But just watching the owner's speech, like, you know what? I realize that they took on the financial responsibility to make this happen. But maybe we should cut their speech going forward. The thing is, every once and again, there's an owner, like Cuban. Cuban's good in front of a mic. He's good in front of a camera. That's fine. I'm perfectly fine with Cuban doing that. But the handful of owners that I think we as a general populace are down to hear give a speech at the end or the beginning of the championship celebration is pretty slim. But anyway, so congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks, man. What a game, what a series. The ratings were down. Someone asked on Monday's show my opinion on like why I think ratings were down. But then I saw new numbers where they were 50% of what they were just a couple of years ago. And the weird thing is leading up to this, like that Bucks Nets closeout game, that was the highest rated game in 3 years. And it's like, wow, that's the semis. This is heating up, baby. And then we get to these finals and, I think they were averaging like 10, 11 million people towards the end there. I'd like to see last night's numbers. But basketball fandom as a whole, you missed a good series. I realize if you were a Phoenix fan, it sucked. But take solace in the fact that you made it. You're probably about, I don't know, a year or 2 years ahead of schedule. You have a coach and a coaching staff that your entire team believes in, and now they're going to buy in, I would assume, even a little bit more, just because they have led you to the promised land. Now with Phoenix, it becomes the Chris Paul, what does he want to do situation. Because, Lakers fans, being Lakers fans, have already started if our guys weren't hurt, this would be a completely different story and they never would have made it here. Could be true. Could very well be true. No idea. And I find that's sour grapes to me. But those that I've heard saying CP3 should come back to LA and join your buddy LeBron and make a championship run here, that to me is an interesting quandary because CP's also been kind of looped in with New York. His former agent, Leon Rose, is the GM over there. They could use a point guard of his caliber, although very few teams, couldn't use someone of Chris Paul's caliber. But does he then stay in Phoenix and knowing that I got these young guys here, man, these guys can play. This is an interesting squad. If we get like one more playmaker on this team, we're going to be unstoppable. Although they could use a little bit more depth at the 5. Although Kaminsky came in and played really well last night, but there was a reason that Monty had pushed them off the rotation. And personally, I felt that Kaminsky shouldn't touch the floor. I would run out some sort of small ball lineup with Campaign and Cam Johnson and potentially Torrey Craig and just force the Bucks to match me on the small and outshoot them. But Kaminsky proved me wrong. I mean, they really needed him last night, and he stepped up big for him. I still think the Suns didn't shoot as many threes as they should have, given the number of actual shooters that they've got that you trust to hit an outside shot. But the CP3 conundrum, starts now. What do they do with him? Do you offer him the max? You kind of have to because of what they did. But if you're CP3 and you take the max, there's no money left over to build a roster, to supplement this roster around you. So how much do you want a championship? Because you got close this year. This is the closest you have ever been. And now you become basically, it's him and someone had posted him and Blake are the only players that have gone up 2-0 in numerous playoff series and lose the series. But you've gotten this close. And Heroes in a half court says Lakers give him Schroeder's money. The problem is I think the Lakers could offer Schroeder that much because they already had him on the team and they can go into the tax to retain your own players. I'd have to look at their salary cap structure, but I know that between LeBron, AD, KCP, Kuzma's hold, and everything else, like they're pretty much capped hamstring. So I don't know what exactly they do. So if CP3 goes to join them, he'd be taking a hell of a pay cut unless they do a sign and trade. But if I'm Phoenix, I don't want any of the stuff that you're going to be sending back because Kuz is definitely going to be on there. And you don't have playing time for Kuzma. I like everybody on Phoenix pretty much better than anything Kuz is going to bring to the table. But yeah, so Phoenix, do you throw the max at CP or do you try and talk him into be like, listen, you could get 40 mil from us, or you can take 20 and we have all this leftover cap space and we can go out and use that extra money to get another one or two potential guys, really, fill out this roster and make us a juggernaut and sign like a 2 or 3 year deal. And we have this core group together for the next 2-3 years, and we could legitimately compete for a championship for the next 2 to 3 years. Now the West is going to be stacked next year once again. Clippers are going to come back full health. Golden State is going to come back full health, and Clippers become a question of whether or not they retain all their guys. But if I had to guess right now, I think Kawhi and Paul George stay. Just because a Kawhi-less PG-led Clippers were still pretty excellent. And PG might have finally gotten the monkey off his back as opposed, because in previous years he's been up and down in the playoffs and quite a bit of down, hence all the jokes. And I mean, he gets dragged at any bad game online. But, so the Clippers are back. Denver's now a big fat question mark with Jamal Murray's injury as to when he comes back and what they do this offseason. True. But Dallas should be a little bit better this year. Memphis is on the come up. Portland is a big fat who in the world knows. I have no idea. And Utah's another where it's like, I think they run it back. Now there's been discussions as to they're willing to shake this up pretty hardcore. And if that means Ingles or Bogdanovich needs to go to do that, then they will. Seems pretty extreme, but you might have to shake things up to get it going. But they're still going to be a tough out. New Orleans, will they finally right this ship? Who knows? Minnesota, perhaps once they get a full, off season together with their new core group, and they maybe they do it. I've got to see it first, but Phoenix, you don't have quite the cakewalk that potentially other teams would have if you just made the finals. It's like when the previous years, usually finals teams, you're like, all right, there's a damn good chance that they can make it back in. But I could see Phoenix losing in the first or second round next year just because the West is going to be so difficult to get through. Whereas in the East, it's like, Philly, depending on what they do, who knows? Brooklyn, if they're at full health, they're going to be tough. And the Hawks and the Bucks. Right now, those are your 4 teams at the top of the East, and then it'll be some combination of whatever underneath. Who knows what Boston's going to be like? Who knows what the Knicks are going to be like? Who knows what Miami's going to be like? But right now, you got 4 teams. So CP, it seems as though you might be wise to take a little bit less money and use the rest to go out and get some more help to surround this group with individuals that can win a championship right now. And that's the thing. You can always find vet guys who will be a net positive for you to have on the team and get them for a relatively modest contract, all things considered. So I don't know. I will be intrigued as to what Phoenix did, but they should not. I realize that all Phoenix fans their heads are hanging low today. And how could it not? You were up 2-0 on top of the world. You looked like juggernauts. I never thought that there would be a sweep, but, you know, in my head, which I never said on the show, and I just brought up earlier, would whoever won that Nets Bucks was going to win the championship. But coming into this finals, I favored Phoenix because the Giannis injury and given how well Phoenix was playing overall, because of the confidence of the guys that are fourth banana and down. You know, once you get past Booker, CP, and Ayton, that's when you find out, you know, if you're a championship team, your top end talent, if they are truly top end, are going to show up. And you can make a case that CP did not a decent amount. And Ayton last night finally had a non-Ayton-ish game. He wasn't abjectly terrible or anything. You know, 4 of 12 is not great, but considering his series as a whole, you know, it's understandable that you're going to have one off night. Whereas he was pretty consistently like 7 of 12 throughout this series. But Phoenix coming into this, man, Mikal Bridges was playing with a tremendous amount of confidence. Cam Payne was playing better than I ever thought possible. Cam Johnson looked like a rotational player on a championship team and one of those guys that everybody else in the league would covet, him and Bridges. Just like, there's 8 guys right there that I like a lot. And when you just looking at that and then like, I've been a fan of Saric for a long time, and then he went down hurt, but the addition of Torrey Craig, and hats off to Torrey Craig, you're going to get a championship ring because you were on the Bucks earlier this season. And then you compare that to the Bucks roster coming in. It's just like, I don't know. Since DiVincenzo went down, it's like you're playing a lot of minutes from Connaughton, and you're playing, you know, some combination of Jeff Teague and Bryn Forbes, who I'm not a fan of either. They're not terrible, but it's just like Forbes he's either completely on or he's not. There is no middle ground. And the completely on seems like 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 games. So then the others, when you're playing him, he's not going to shoot well. He's going to have the confidence to shoot it, but he's not going to shoot well. No, he's also not going to shoot 20 shots like Drew will do. And I wonder what that is with Drew. Because some of those are just like, that's a tough bounce. Just rolled straight off. Almost got it. And others it's a miss, and you can tell it as soon as it leaves his hands. But for a guy that good and that just coordinated and in tune with his body, there's no way you can play defense that well and not have complete control. And to turn around and just have off nights, like when he's shooting that bad early on, I was like, oh shit, they're going to lose this game. And we're going back to Phoenix for game 7, which makes me happy. It's one more basketball game, but Giannis was not having it, man. Just was not having it. I mean, if Giannis had shot what he had shot, he shot 89.5% from the line last night. But if he shot like he did in the previous game, where he shoots 55-ish%, that's now 7 missed free throws. Just rough math off the top of my head. 7 missed free throws. So it's a tie ball game at the end of the 4th. That's a completely different story. So if Giannis doesn't show up in every facet of the game last night, they're toast. They have no chance. Such an impressive performance for a closeout game to put up 50 in a closeout and shoot so efficiently, but do that well from the line, and then pile in 14 boards, 5 blocks. Now, he did have 6 turnovers. They were turnover machines last night. 18 total for the game. But I mean, that first half, especially that opening, handful of possessions in the first, you're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Just playing so sloppy. This isn't a regular season game. This is legacy defining shit right now. How good was that dunk from Lopez? Late in game? When he did that, and he just yelled into the crowd. I can't imagine how crazy that crowd must have gone live because it was so loud you couldn't hear the ref whistles. Like, good for them, man. That's what a home crowd should be. And hopefully you can maintain that and this doesn't turn into a Warrior situation where they became so good that they priced out all their truly rabid hardcore fans that used to show up and make Golden State such a difficult place to play in, especially in the playoffs. And I'm not saying it's not as good, but they were known league-wide as a tough place to play. It's like the Seahawks with their 12th man. It's known. It's like it gets loud there. It gets really loud there. And yeah, it seemed as though the Bucks fans were priding themselves on being as loud as humanly possible last night. But that Lopez dunk was just so massive. And he had, I think it was 3 straight possessions where he was their entire offense. He had like a little floater, one-handed floater from like a foot or two in from the free throw line, if memory serves. And then the dunk came after that. And then he had a jumper the next possession down. So it was like 3 out of 4 or potentially 3 straight possessions where Lopez got him buckets, and they needed it, man. They needed every point they could get outside of Giannis. And thankfully they got it because other guys that have been chipping in, like Connaughton, had a bad game. But he's been so rock solid the rest of it that I think everybody on the team was fine with him shooting every time he touched the ball. And it's not like he was egregiously shooting too much, but he went 0 for 4. And they were all threes. But considering he's been 50% from 3 for the rest of this series, it's like you kind of take that. I'll take 0 for 4, especially in a W that gets me a championship. I have zero problem with that. But it's crazy. Congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks, our 2020-21 champion. So I'm going to go through the chat really quick. I have neglected it, and I apologize. This party's over, says glad to be back. He's been gone since his Lakers were eliminated. All right, well, at least you came back. A lot of people are doing me a favor. Let me know how the audio is going. Jeremy Bauer says Giannis looked so confident with every free throw he took. He did. He really did. Professor Rhino checking in from Australia, giving some props to the show. Thank you, Professor Rhino. Some love for Tim Duncan in the chat. Let's see. Heroes in a half court says Spurs have tons of avenues to improve with cap space. Contracts of Mills, Gay, and DeMar being off the books and another top 15 pick. True. Very true. Spurs could be interesting next year. And what about if Keldon Johnson balls out in the Olympics? He's just going to come back and have even more confidence going into the regular season. That's one of the benefits that a number of players have talked about over the years when the core group of the aging superstars that we have now, you know, your LeBrons, but previously was Wade and Carmelo and all those guys, their first Olympics with Kobe, his work ethic rubbed off on all of them. To know that, because he was showing up to 8 or 9 a.m. team meetings, and he's already in full sweat, and he's got a trainer in tow, and he had gotten up 1,000 shots already. Woke up early and just like, that's how he goes to bed early, doesn't go out and party. And it's stuff like that. Now KD is a lot of the discussion is his workouts and the amount of time that he puts into building and developing his game is on that kind of legendary level. So perhaps that bleeds off on a Keldon, and he takes that to heart and sees the type of effort that somebody of KD's caliber puts into just, this is all he does. I mean, those reports that came out from the journalist that was embedded with the Nets and saying that all KD does is play basketball and smoke pot. It's all he does. Doesn't go out and party, doesn't do any of the rest of it. It's just hoops 24/7. That's what he does with his life. So perhaps something like that rubs off on Keldon. So the Spurs, and I never want to count out a Pop team. I think if you can get something for DeMar, you do it. So potentially on a sign and trade or something. But anyway, so Daniel Saville is checking in. This party's over. Thoughts on USA basketball? And Jeremy Bowers is saying, please discuss. So we'll do that to close out. I'm sure I'll check back in with you guys. I know next week because Olympics will have started. Although the announcement, was it yesterday, 2 days ago, that Japan or the Japanese officials are still reserving the right to shut the games down. And they've already had COVID cases where athletes are, in quarantine now once they got over there and they tested positive, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to compete. They've already taken all fans out of the stands, which is going to be weird. I really think that they should have just shifted this to next summer, but it cost them some like $4 to $5 billion to delay by 1 year. So delaying another year, and they've already had budget overruns, which happens with every Olympics. Everyone is like, oh, I think we can do this for $4 billion. And then by the time the games actually start, it's $18 billion. It's like it's just ridiculous money. And I've read reports where since the numbers have ballooned to these degrees, no country or no city turns a profit. They lose money on this. So is it just the prestige of we hosted an Olympics to cost our, populace, our constituency, our tax base, all this money when you could have used that money for infrastructure and whatnot? Brazil being a key example of that. But USA basketball, so losing the 2 games to Nigeria and then Australia, I think it's both sides of the coin. Both of those programs are really coming up. I mean, Nigeria is stocked with a ton of interesting young talent, and they even have more in the pipeline of guys in college or look to be, 5-star recruits and whatnot. So for future generations, it looks like Nigeria could be a player in the world or on the world stage when it comes to basketball. And Australia is a collection of guys that have been playing together for years. And as much as I think that some people don't want to hear that, when we just throw together a whole slew of individuals that have never played together versus, because this isn't 30 years ago with the Dream Team where they don't have the development and the programs in these other countries like they do now. So the talent gap is so massive that it doesn't matter that we throw together a bunch of guys that have never played together, at least outside of all-star games and whatnot. So it does take time to somewhat gel. And then, why Kevin Love was on that team is beyond me. Losing Bradley Beal sucks. And they're also not at full health. You're still waiting on Drew, Middleton, and Booker to show up. And I'm not saying that they would have made all the difference in the world against Nigeria and Australia, but we're playing with not our full team, a bunch of guys that have to kind of get used to one another and figure out who's going to take over where. Like that was what was interesting about, that earlier, I think it was the Beijing Olympics, was the one where all those young guys learned from Kobe. But to see them naturally defer to Kobe on the court when they needed shots late, and it's all these guys that have been the number one options their entire lives, and in those big high leverage moments, they defer to Kobe. So on this team, I'm assuming it's defer to KD and just have him cook out there. But you got him and Lillard, but you need to figure out the pecking order on the team. And I think it'll take some time to gain that cohesion that other squads have. Just they've been playing together since the age of who knows what, 14 or so, and just been coming up together and been in the same system with a lot of the same training staffs and coaching staffs. And there's a familiarity there playing together, whereas ours is a scattershot approach. You know, if we were bringing back a core of individuals that we'd had in previous Olympics, you know, you have your Carmelos or LeBron came back and CP and whatnot. Just like, okay, these guys have done it. They understand the system. They understand the FIBA rules. It's a different game on some level. You know, players complaining about not getting specific calls. You're not going to get. It's officiated slightly differently, and certain things that you're anticipating from NBA refs, you're just not going to get. And you need to know that a shot is basically live at all times. You can contest if it's on the rim. You can rip it off of the rim. I gotta be honest, man. I love that and I hate it. If the ball's rolling around on the rim, you can tear it off because you lose a lot of the drama. I mean, think about Kawhi's shot last playoffs against the Sixers, or 2 playoffs ago. If you can take that off the rim, where's the drama of an entire crowd and viewing audience at home just watching that thing bounce on the rim and bounce on the rim and then eventually go in? You lose all that drama. You lose the huge moment, the celebration, the primal scream. But it is fun to see somebody take points off from another person. Yeah, Heroes in the Half Court says Powell was a tipping pro the other day. Crazy how effective he still is, especially when you know the rules and you're accustomed to it. Yeah, you just know you have that trained into your brain of the ball's up there, but the ball's, like what Lopez got called for last night on that goaltend. Pretty sure that's legal in FIBA. So it's just the certain things that you have to train yourself, towards. Should they be worried? Of course they should be worried. Dropping 2 straight exhibition games. And then they won the next 2. But losing to a team that the last time our conglomeration of top-tier talent like this played them, I think we won by like 83 or something ridiculous. So, it's been 5 years, and this team is now there's several players on there that are super interesting on Nigeria's team. But even with that collection of talent, should they beat our guys? Could it happen if we had been playing together in full strength? Although the argument can be made, Nigeria is kind of the exception to the rule because the guys are so young and the program isn't as established as, say, an Australia that we lost to. That Nigeria is also doing it with a collection of guys that may not be as familiar with themselves, or with each other rather, as more established teams. Your Spain's, your Australia's, whatever the case is. So yeah, Australia has made more sense to me. It's like, if you're going to lose, these guys have been playing together for a long, long time. But Nigeria was like, oh, okay, all right, this is interesting. But I'll worry about it when we actually get to the Olympics itself. In no way is this Greece, what was that, 2004? That team going into it, I thought was a weird team. And ultimately, it bore out to be the case. Just like, it was a collection of great talent, but I didn't understand the fit of a few of the different pieces. And I think, at the time, but I still felt we were going to win gold at the Olympics because of course we would. We're bringing all these NBA players together. Anyway, so will I do Olympic, game or Olympic discussion? Yeah, I think I might do that next week. I haven't decided fully what I'm going to do with the off season. Heroes in a Half Court asking if I'm going to do a draft episode. Possibly. The thing is, I'll have to bring in other people because I don't watch college, so I don't know diddly about outside of getting other people's perspectives. I don't have an opinion of my own about these guys because I didn't watch them. I don't want to show up here and falsely tell you, oh, I love this guy, and this guy, because I'll be transparent about it. It's like, okay, I went and watched mixtapes and scouting reports said, coming into this year's draft guys, I liked 3 guys after watching everybody's scouting reports and mixtapes. And LaMelo Ball was by far the best. And I don't know, all the stats of him coming out of the New Zealand Basketball League just like scared me off. I liked Wiseman, I liked Obi Toppin, and I liked Pokashevsky. Those are the 3 guys I liked. Wiseman is still TBD. Obi Toppin, I think the reason I liked him was like he is what he is. And what he is basically Amari Light. And I think that's good. And then Pokashevsky's like, I don't know what this dude is, but he's interesting. Just watching his mixtapes playing in whatever EuroLeague it was, you'd see it was great, man. You can go back and you can find game clips where he comes down and he makes a play and you're like, what the world? Like, this dude is 7 foot. That was amazing. And then the next time down the court, wildly throws a pass to nobody or charges into 3 defenders and just makes a piss poor play. And then 2 plays after that comes down and does this step back from 36 feet that is cash money. Just, you can hear the nylon rip. Like, oh my God, this guy it's such a roller coaster. I love everything about this. So we'll see if he blossoms and develops in OKC. I still have hope for Pokashevsky. I like Pokashevsky, but he is a mixed bag right now. It is good and terrible, and that is exactly what you're going to get. Or I guess great and terrible, but great seems a little excessive as right now, and so does terrible. But if I can have if it lines up and we get guys on that know draft prospects and stuff like that and have watched college, I'm more than happy to do it. I just don't want to show up here and be disingenuous. If I haven't watched them play, I really can't have an opinion about it. It drives me nuts when you see people do that. They're like, you clearly are just palming the opinions of others and passing it off as your own. Like, this is pathetic, is what it is. So I would rather do what I just told you. Be open and honest with you as opposed to lying and trying to make myself off as some expert about the up-and-coming young kids. Yeah, I don't know. Cade seems to be the overall consensus number 1. I have not seen him play a second. And then after that, I do like the bullshit smokescreen coming from, well, we might not, maybe we won't. And then Houston saying, we're really motivated. We want to move up to number 1. It's like, why would Detroit do that? What do you have to offer Detroit? What do they want? John Wall? Do you guys want John Wall? We'll give you John Wall. Come on. So I don't know. But will I do a draft show? Yeah, I don't see why not. I'll have more updates. Let me think about what exactly I'd like to do in the off season. Because I have some thoughts, but the thoughts that I have would take a tremendous amount of work. And I don't mind doing that, but I'd like to put in the work if it got traction, so to speak. Anyway, but once again, congratulations to both the Bucks and the Suns for a wildly entertaining series. The Bucks, you are the champions this year, deservedly so. I don't want to hear any of the nonsense of injuries because injuries are a factor every year. Every year. Some years more so than others. I mean, you can grade championships as to how difficult the journey was for each of them and say, rank them the most impressive of these championship runs versus others. But to me, a championship is a championship is a championship. So personally, I don't want to hear the injuries nonsense because you can do that pretty much every year if you really want to. And I just don't see the point because now you're litigating every year's championship except for whichever ones you don't feel. But then it's an opinion. And I realize that this is all opinion. But it's not an opinion that I share and I think holds water. So that is it for today's Dropping Dimes. That is a wrap on the 21 season. An excellent season. And I want to say thanks to everybody that joined me every week. Another great chat today. Tons of people tuning in live. I appreciate it. It's nice to see. It's good to see this familiar faces coming back week after week, and then the people popping in and out. Like this party's over. He bounced for a while because his Lakers were out, and then he came back for the finals. Good for you, man. I know it's difficult. As a Bulls fan, I haven't had to taste that in my mouth, that bitterness in my mouth for quite a while, thankfully. In the same time, I wish that I could. The taste of defeat is better than just being on the outside looking in, all parched, vaguely recalling what it's like to even be in the mix for this, to have actual championship aspirations. It's been so long. Anyway, doesn't matter. Thanks for joining this week on Dropping Dimes. Thanks to everybody that joined me all season long. And we're going to keep this going. I'll be back next week, and hopefully it'll give me a little bit of time to plan out what exactly I want to do with the off season for the show here. But that is it. You can follow me anywhere at Matt Knost. I'll see you guys next week with I know. Eduardo Hirota says trade season, Matt. In August, free agency begins in August. There would definitely be free agency discussion. Don't you worry. That's everybody's favorite time. There's more traction during free agency than the rest of the year entirely as people try and figure out what can happen with their teams and how they can tweak and change. Shit, we could have Dame on a brand new team. Think how monumental a shift that would be and what they'd have to give up, whoever that is, to get him. Could happen. I don't know. Mixed signals coming out of Portland. Anyway, that is it. I'll see you guys next week with a little Olympics discussion, probably some off-season talk, and some sort of blueprint for this show for the next 2 months. So that is it. I'll see you guys next week. Same time, noon Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Same channel if you want to tune in live, youtube.com/dropping dimes. You can join me over there. And pardon me. That is it for today's show. Stay safe out there. Stay 6 feet apart. Get the vaccine if you can. Wear your masks. And I'll see you guys next week. Till then, adios.